Hi everyone. Our planet is a mysterious place, full of strange, mystical, and simply incomprehensible things, and sometimes even the smartest scientists can't explain them. Some of those incredible phenomena are hanging stones. These huge rocks are not really able to float above the ground or to swing on some vines, but it's still a complicated and interesting thing to watch. So in today's video, we're going to show you 10 amazing hanging stones that challenge the laws of physics. Let's get it on. Balancing Rock. This amazing place in Nova Scotia attracts many tourists, which comes as no surprise. Just look at this rock. Seems like it's challenging the law of universal gravitation. The great Newton, working on his scientific theory, couldn't even imagine that our planet's home to these incredible stones, which are not affected by the force of gravity of the Earth. Nevertheless, this natural phenomenon is not uncommon. This balancing rock is located on the very edge of a small stone pedestal and rises upwards for as much as 30 feet. Besides, the stone itself is rather narrow, 6 feet in diameter. At first sight, the rock resembles a kind of totem that rises formidably above the raging water, but neither storm winds nor waves can bother it. Golden Rock. For more than 2,500 years, a huge granite boulder has been hanging over this abyss on the top of Kiak Tio Hill in Myanmar. This is amazing, but the stone, covered with gilding, balances about 3,200 feet above the huge abyss. The inhabitants of Myanmar themselves are sure that some heavenly powers are involved in this, and only they are able to hold this heavy rock. According to legend, one day Buddha bestowed a lock of his hair upon a monk hermit he met. There were no museums then, so the man turned to the king, who decided to lift a huge stone from the seabed. A small pagoda was built on top of it, and the invaluable object was placed there, and to this day it protects the stone from falling. Krishna's Butterball. Have you ever taken a photo trying to look as if you are holding someone on your hand? Well, it's not cool anymore, so we have a more interesting idea for you. First of all, you need to buy tickets to India, and then go to the city of Mahabalipuram. Next to the temple of Ganesha Rata, you would find an unusual stone. Its dimensions are striking. In diameter, the stone reaches 16 feet and is inclined at an angle of 45 degrees. The boulder weighs, by the way, as much as 250 tons and is miraculously placed on a slippery surface of a hill. Even more surprising is that the boulder has been in this place for over 1,200 years. In 1908, Governor Arthur Laurie considered this stone too dangerous and ordered to move it to another place with the help of 7 elephants. However, the boulder refused to move. The giant ball was like frozen to earth. But the locals, of course, have their own explanation for this. According to Hindu mythology, when the god Krishna was a child, he was very fond of butter. Therefore, the large boulder is actually a butterball, which the god dropped from the skies. Steamboat Rock. According to many tourist sites, if you're in the United States, you should definitely visit this public park, known as the Garden of the Gods in the city of Colorado Springs. This park has a large number of red rocks of a rather unusual shape. One of those amazing creations of nature is known as the steamboat, and some people even call it the 8th wonder of the world. Well, how can you miss this, right? The rock indeed looks like a big steamboat. It's unbelievable, but scientists have calculated that this huge boulder, weighing 700 tons, has been standing on this place for almost 60 million years. By the way, there were several attempts to turn the steamboat rock, and in the middle of the 20th century, a group of students almost succeeded, after which the local government cemented the foundation of the boulder. Yes, now you can't say that the stone's balancing, but it still looks very cool. Davasco Stone. Do you know what the most indecisive boulder in the world looks like? Meet Davasco, a stone hanging over an abyss in the city of Tandil, southeast of Buenos Aires. At first sight, it seems that this huge rock is going to slide down, but it's afraid, so it's frozen to the edge and is being held by some incredible forces, something quite difficult since it weighs more than 300 tons. Although some scientists are sure that the stone of Davasco wasn't standing still, but slowly sliding down, so slowly that it took it thousands of years. Unfortunately, on February 29, 1912, this huge boulder ended all and fell from the rock, splitting in two. Maybe the works in the mines nearby helped, or maybe the strength of locals who were constantly trying to push the rock to prove to tourists that it could withstand anything. We don't know which was the real reason, but what is certain is that in 2007, the inhabitants of the city of Tandil decided to restore Davasko and attached an exact copy to the rock, but they couldn't achieve the same incredible balance, so the new version is just made of plastic. Devil's Marbles. This group of large granite boulders is known, in the language of the Aborigines of Northern Australia, as Kalu Kalu, although people call them the Devil's Marbles, and there's a reason for it. No, they don't have any mysterious symbols, and there's nothing paranormal about them, but just look at these huge granite stones. It seems like someone with supernatural powers has obviously put their hand to them. Well, or at least a company of builders who brought these cobblestones, dumping them in one place. But in fact, they all formed naturally. Lava, then a few earthquakes, water, wind, temperature changes. That's the recipe for these magic stones, which can split as smoothly as if someone had cut them with a lightsaber. According to legend, the Force or the Jedis had nothing to do with this, but there were rumors about a devil who, passing through the valley, scattered all these boulders around. What for? Well, perhaps he just had some extra stones. Kierag Bolton. So wait, one more time. Kierag Bolton. Phew. Perhaps this piece of rock with a weird Norwegian name is probably one of the most famous balancing stones in the world. It looks like the most common boulder, but its location makes you feel excitement and fear at the same time. Kierag Bolton literally hangs over an abyss clamped between two vertical cliffs, about 3,300 feet above sea level. It seems that a long time ago, when no tourists were climbing through these mountains, the boulder broke from the top, fell down and got stuck in the crevice, and it still is. Every year it attracts many extreme enthusiasts, and at the same time ordinary people who want to stand or sit for a couple of seconds over the abyss. Nevertheless, this stone is far from being the most dangerous stone in the world, because to this day, no one has fallen from it. This doesn't mean that it's easy to stay on top of the Kierag Bolton, because there's usually strong winds at that altitude, and you can easily lose your balance. But you can be sure about one thing: this huge boulder is definitely not going to move even an inch. Zimbabwe Balancing Rocks. In order to reach these stones, you have to drive about 6 miles away from Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. Well, of course, you first need to somehow end up in Zimbabwe, but these are just little details when it comes to a whole park of rocks which don't obey the laws of gravity. Local people treat them with great respect. You can see these balancing stones even on the bills. Of course, there were many legends involving ancient gods, heroes, and stones. You can notice the incredible rock structures from afar, and this isn't surprising because they are just gigantic. The pieces of granite lying on top of one another arose in the middle of the savannah because of ancient volcanoes, wind, and other destructive things, but from the side they look as if some giant child had made a pyramid out of stones. Brimham Rocks. If you've already thought that all the magic stones challenging gravity are in remote parts of the earth, in deserts and mountains, here's something a bit different. In the north of England, among the most common Yorkshire fields, there's this amazing geological monument known as Brimham Rocks. In an area of 20 hectares, you can find several rocks of the most strange shapes and sizes. If you have a well-developed imagination, then their outlines might actually remind you of something, like a toad, an eagle, a turtle, or even a dancing bear, as if the White Witch had cast a spell on them, and the poor little animals turned into statues many years ago, and didn't even look like themselves. But still, however, the most striking stone that can be found in these places is known as the Idol Rock, and it's one of the most unusual balancing stones in the world. It's about 15 feet high and it weighs about 200 tons. And all these 200 tons are balancing on a tiny base. Honestly, we have no idea how scientists managed to weigh this hulk without breaking the balance. And by the way, these same scientists have calculated that it took about 18,000 years for the creation of Idol Rock, and a lot of water and wind, and maybe a bit of druid magic. Bill Dan Rocks. And now a little bit of real magic. Bill Dan is known throughout the world for being able to make friends with the uncomfortable forces of nature. You don't believe us? Bill Dan, sculptor and real performance master, specializes in the creation of stone figures, and they are incredible. Without any magic wand or complex spells, he does what seems impossible. Just take a look. In the deft hands of the sculptor, the stones seem to be tamed and they just jump on each other. Bill learned to create stunning balancing towers made of stones of the most varied shapes and sizes, and he does it in just a few minutes. Surprisingly, despite the apparent shakiness of the towers, birds for some reason are very confident about them. So confident that they even try to build their nests there, which sometimes makes the sculptures crumble. By the way, stones aren't Bill's only specialization. He also creates similar structures from cans of Coke, glasses, and even sneakers. Now tell us, friends, what other natural anomalies do you know? Share your stories in the comments below and give us some likes.
Guys, it's time to recharge your brain. Visit the channel Brain Time. There you'll find a lot of interesting and useful facts, lots of positive energy, and tons of useful information. Subscribe right now. We promise it's going to be really exciting.
Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks, and we'll be right back to you as fast as we can.